What you will never find in a glossy Australian tourism brochure are the places locals quietly warn you about. Across this country, there are towns where residents advise travelers not to stop after dark. There are stretches of empty highway where unexplained lights have reportedly chased vehicles for more than 180 years, witnessed not only by ordinary drivers, but by police officers, scientists, and hardened skeptics. There are swimming holes where 19 people have died in eerily similar circumstances, while indigenous elders insist the warnings attached to those waters have existed for thousands of years. Some towns were abandoned almost overnight, meals left on tables, and personal belongings untouched, and no one has successfully resettled them since. In certain former asylums, investigators claim the suffering absorbed by the walls has manifested in physical attacks against those who enter. There is even a town so hazardous that the government attempted to erase it, removing it from maps, cutting electricity, halting mail service. Yet decades later, people are still dying simply from visiting. These accounts are not urban legends or campfire tales embellished over time. They are supported by coronial findings, police documentation, and historical records dating back to the 1800s. The witnesses include truck drivers who have traveled the same highways for 30 years and seen the same inexplicable phenomena, station owners whose families have reported identical experiences across 3 generations, and scientists who arrived as skeptics but departed without answers. The warnings do not originate from tourism operators selling ghost tours. They come from locals who have lived alongside these mysteries their entire lives and sincerely urge caution. I found 15 such places, and the caution attached to number 1 has persisted for over 180 years. At number 15 is Silverton in New South Wales, a near-ghost town about 25 kilometers from Broken Hill. Once home to around 3,000 residents, its population now sits at approximately 50. Its stark, cinematic atmosphere has made it a favorite filming location for apocalyptic movies. Mad Max was shot there. The remaining locals speak plainly about what visitors report. Figures in period clothing seen around historic buildings, especially at dusk. Unexplained shapes appearing in cemetery photographs. Film equipment malfunctioning in specific spots despite working perfectly elsewhere. A film location scout who worked on multiple productions in Silverton told me he is not superstitious, yet he refuses to conduct night shoots in certain areas after too many crew members independently described seeing the same things. One traveling couple photographed the cemetery late in the afternoon and later discovered a figure standing in a doorway of a building that had been empty at the time. When they returned to check, no one was there. The trade-off is a historically rich destination, but most reports cluster at dusk and after dark, and locals are rarely surprised when visitors claim they saw someone who was not there. Number 14 is Farina in South Australia. Its population is 0. Completely abandoned, it lies 260 kilometers north of Lee Creek along unsealed roads. Founded on the mistaken government belief that wheat could thrive there, Farina was built on a promise the land could not fulfill. Campers near the ruins describe lights moving through the town at night when no one else is present. They report hearing conversations, laughter, even piano music drifting from empty structures. Restoration volunteers have found tools moved overnight and speak of a persistent sensation of being watched. One volunteer who has returned over 5 years told me he does not believe in ghosts, yet he is convinced something exists there. The isolation is total. The nearest town is 260 kilometers away, making accidental visitors an unlikely explanation. Farina was abandoned when the truth about the land became undeniable, but some insist not everything left. At number 13 stands Gwalia in Western Australia, located 5 kilometers from Leonora. Once a thriving gold rush town of 1,200 people, it is now maintained by just 2 or 3 caretakers. When the mine shut down abruptly during the 1963 nickel price crash, residents departed so quickly that homes were left furnished, beds still made, tables set, clothes hanging in wardrobes. Visitors report glimpsing figures through windows of houses that prove empty upon inspection. Others hear conversations in Italian and Slavic, languages spoken by the immigrant workforce that once lived there. A heritage worker employed at Gwalia for 3 years told me she has worked at historic sites across Australia, but this one feels different. Those houses are not empty, she said. A photographer in 2020 captured an image showing what appeared to be a figure reflected behind him in a window, though he was alone. He reviewed the photograph repeatedly and cannot explain it. The recommendation is simple: visit in daylight and remember these were once family homes. Yet, even decades later, people report seeing glimpses of those who never returned. Number 12 is Wycliffe Well in the Northern Territory, self-proclaimed UFO capital of Australia, with roughly 8 permanent residents at its roadhouse. Sightings began with World War II servicemen stationed nearby and have continued for 80 years. Military documents reference unusual incidents. Witnesses describe hovering lights that change direction instantly and vanish. In 1989, police officers observed lights for an extended period. A long-haul truck driver who has driven the Stewart Highway for over 30 years told me he initially blamed fatigue. After repeated sightings spanning 2 decades, he accepted that something unexplained occurs near Wycliffe Well. In 2019, a tour group of 12 strangers simultaneously watched a light hover, shift color, and shoot vertically at impossible speed for 15 minutes. Many visitors see nothing unusual, yet the Roadhouse logbook of sightings is thicker than a phone directory. Reports have come from soldiers, police, pilots, and thousands of independent observers over 8 decades. At number 11 is Picton in New South Wales, a functioning town of around 4,800 residents located 90 kilometers southwest of Sydney. Its paranormal reputation is so entrenched that real estate agents must legally disclose certain histories. The Red Bank Range Tunnel, the Mushroom Tunnel, historic buildings, and private homes all have decades of documented reports. A paranormal investigator with 20 years of experience described Picton as consistently active. His team has recorded clear EVP voices, sudden temperature drops exceeding 10 degrees within seconds, and equipment failures in precise locations. A homeowner who purchased a historic property in 2015 described footsteps on stairs, doors opening unaided, and a hallway figure, experiences shared by previous owners. She had been informed of the property's reputation before buying it, and initially found it charming. It was far less charming at 3 a.m., alone, hearing footsteps approach. Experiences range from mild unease to outright terror, and ghost tours book out months ahead. Number 10 is Kapunda in South Australia, about 80 kilometers north of Adelaide, population approximately 3,000. It calls itself Australia's most haunted town. The North Kapunda Hotel, site of a documented 1800s child murder, reports apparitions, moving objects, and voices. The Kapunda Mine, where fatalities occurred during its operation, is associated with underground sounds and figures. A ghost tour operator with 15 years of experience told me skeptics who came to mock have left pale and shaken. One such skeptic attended determined to debunk the claims and emerged with unexplained bruises after something grabbed his arm in front of witnesses who saw no one touch him. Mocking or provoking whatever is present reportedly triggers stronger reactions, and even tour operators treat the town's reputation with caution. In Victoria, Beechworth, population roughly 4,000, holds number 9. Located 270 kilometers northeast of Melbourne, it contains the former Mayday Hills Asylum, where over 9,000 patients died during 128 years of operation, all buried in unmarked graves. Shock therapy, restraints, and isolation were standard treatments. The Beechworth jail executed criminals, including bushranger associates. Former staff acknowledged certain wards were known to be active. Investigators frequently record phenomena, particularly in the children's ward. The atmosphere alone unsettles many visitors. The scale of suffering, more than 9,000 deaths, seems to linger. Number 8 is the quarantine station at North Head, Manly, New South Wales. Established in 1832 and operating for 152 years until 1984, it processed sick and dying passengers from incoming ships. Over 500 documented deaths occurred there, likely more, with mass graves remaining on site. It is now a functioning hotel known as Q Station. Staff training includes warnings about unexplained events. A staff member of 5 years admitted she initially thought the warnings were jokes, until her second week. Guests have reported figures at the foot of their beds, only to be calmly offered room changes by reception, who state it happens. While most activity is reportedly harmless, Some visitors depart early. Number 7 is Z Ward at Glenside in South Australia. Built in 1885 to confine the criminally insane and operating until 1973. Unlike other institutions, reports here describe aggressive phenomena. Investigators have reported scratches, pushes, thrown equipment, and EVPs stating, "I'll kill you." Temperature drops of more than 15 degrees have been recorded within seconds. Security staff have described doors slamming shut and unexplained screams. Z Ward housed violent and disturbed patients subjected to restraints, isolation, and electroshock. Access is restricted, and investigators warn. Do not go alone, do not provoke, and be prepared for physical contact. Number 6 is Airedale Mental Hospital in Ararat, Victoria, Australia's largest asylum. Over 13,000 patients died during 130 years, buried in unmarked graves. At its height, more than 1,000 patients lived across 60-plus buildings. J. Ward housed the criminally insane. Treatments included shock therapy, lobotomies, restraints, and isolation. Paranormal investigators report pushes, voices begging for help, equipment failures, and panic attacks among visitors. Some people become physically ill after visiting. Official tours are required due to structural risks. Number 5 is Widenum in Western Australia. This is not a supernatural threat, but a lethal environmental one. Once home to 20,000 residents, only 3 remain. Founded in 1937 for blue asbestos mining, the only blue asbestos mine in Australia, workers and families were exposed without warning. Mining ceased in 1966, but tailings remained. More than 2,000 deaths have been attributed to asbestos exposure, with mesothelioma latency reaching 50 years. There is no safe exposure level. A single fiber can cause disease, and average survival after diagnosis is 8 to 14 months. The government removed Widenum from maps, cut utilities, and advises never visiting. The danger is invisible, the landscape deceptively beautiful. Yet the death toll continues to rise. Number 4 is Devil's Pool at Babinda, Queensland. Since 1959, at least 19 people, mostly young, strong swimmers, have drowned there under strikingly similar circumstances. The Yidinji people tell of Oalana, a young woman whose spirit calls men into the water. Regardless of belief, the pattern is undeniable. Swimmers vanish suddenly in calm conditions, bodies recovered in the same area. Indigenous elders have warned against the site for thousands of years. Official signage urges visitors not to swim. The tragedy continues despite barriers and CCTV. Number 3 is Monte Cristo Homestead in Junee, New South Wales, often called Australia's most haunted house. Built in 1885 and owned by the Ryan family since 1963, it has a tragic history. A baby dropped downstairs, a stable boy burned alive, a maid who fell to her death, a man chained for 40 years, and a reclusive widow who rarely left the house. For over 60 years, owners have documented unexplained activity. Apparitions, chain-dragging sounds, battery drain, and consistent equipment failures are reported. Overnight stays require mental preparation. Number 2 is Port Arthur in Tasmania, established in 1830 as a brutal convict settlement. More than 1,646 convicts are buried on the Isle of the Dead. The separate prison employed sensory deprivation. Boys as young as 9 endured harsh confinement at Point Pure. In 1996, 35 people were killed there in Australia's worst mass shooting. Paranormal reports date back to the 1870s. Guides recount lanterns extinguishing in still air and visitors overwhelmed by emotion. At number 1 are the Min Min lights near Boulia in Queensland. First recorded by Europeans in 1838, with the term originating from a 1918 sighting near the Min Min Hotel graveyard. These lights have been reported for over 180 years. Police officers, mounted constables, pilots, scientists, and station owners have documented them. In 1947, the Australian Geographic Society sponsored an investigation. The phenomenon was observed but not explained. In 1981, a pilot reported a light matching his aircraft's maneuvers. Observers describe lights that respond intelligently, moving away when approached, stopping when observers stop. Sightings continue today. Unlike haunted atmospheres, these are physical light phenomena documented, photographed, and studied without definitive explanation. Locals warn, do not chase them off-road, do not attempt to reach them, and if one follows you, do not panic. These 15 Australian locations share consistent reports from credible witnesses, generational warnings, and phenomena that defy tidy explanation. Swimming holes have claimed lives for 60 years while elders say the warnings are ancient. Asylums where 13,000 people died produce reports of physical attacks. Towns so contaminated governments tried to erase them still cause deaths decades later. And lights in the outback remain unexplained after 180 years of documentation. Perhaps that is worth remembering the next time you drive through unfamiliar territory and a local quietly advises you to be careful. They may know something Google does not. If you have read this far, consider subscribing for more explorations of the Australia tourism boards rarely mention. Which location surprised you most? Have you experienced something unexplained in Australia? Share your thoughts and pass this along to others who understand that some mysteries remain genuinely unsolved.